Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. So let's go ahead and talk about Cobra Kai. And this is actually going to be my spoilers review. And so if you have not seen it, be sure to go check it out first. Or you could also check out my non-spoilers review. I will leave that in the description area below. And so in this particular review, I'm not going to be talking about every single episode, but I am going to be focusing on the elements that I think really made Cobra Kai special and that made me want to come back to season 2. So the first thing that I absolutely enjoyed about this show is the characters, both old and the new. Now, one thing that the creators of this show, and especially the actors and actresses, did really well is they made you care about the characters. And the two central characters are obviously Johnny Lawrence and Daniel Larusso. And so in this particular season, it's really not about who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. Because the way in which the creator showed this is that it could be either one of them. They're both good and bad. And so I love how they come from that perspective instead of just the perspective of the other Karate Kid series where there was a clearly defined good guy and bad guy. Now, Karate Kid 1 did change that a little bit slightly at the end when you found out that Johnny Lawrence, he was really not the bad guy. It was John Kreese that was really behind the scenes, the actual villain. And so what I liked about how they did it here is whenever Johnny Lawrence, when you meet him at the beginning all these years later, he's basically a loser and he hates his life because of Daniel Russo. And also his relationship with his own son, with Robbie, is bad as well. And everything that is not good in his life, he blames it on Daniel Russo. But as you see throughout this actual season, he begins to realize that that's not his fault, or at least not all of it. And he spends so much time watching this movie called Iron Eagle with Louis Gossett Jr. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. And it's funny that through that movie, he actually gets inspiration to really go out and move forward to open his dojo. Besides an incident, as you remember, when he was trying to get his car. And so that was one thing. And then also, as you're watching this actual series, it seems like they're changing to somebody different, okay? Like, for example, Johnny Lawrence, it seems like he's going to be a good guy. He's going to be the good guy. But he always pulls back and he shows you that he is still Johnny Lawrence. Perfect examples of this is when he's actually got the kids into the dojo and he's humiliating them. He's calling them losers, weirdos. He didn't even allow Aisha to join at first because Cobra Kai doesn't have girls. And then another one of the kids, he called him Lip because he has a cleft lip. And then eventually that kid becomes Hawk. And he even calls Miguel at the beginning a menudo or another immigrant. He does not care about political correctness, which I absolutely love because it actually fits his character. Okay, so the creators wisely didn't do things just to do things. And then with Daniel Russo, he's also still challenged and conflicted by the events of the past as well. Even though he is way more successful, he has a better life than Johnny Lawrence, he still feels a lot of anger towards him about all the things that happen. Okay, and then there are moments, like for example, when he tries to shut down Johnny Lawrence's dojo by, hiking up the rents. And that's not something that you think is a good move. That's really not a good thing to do. That's kind of like an evil thing to do, right? But as you also find out, whenever Daniel Russo moves over to the dark side, he always comes back to who he is. There are many moments in there that both of them go between that fine line between good and bad. Okay? And so that was probably my favorite part about the series. The two central characters that we love the most, they're also the most complex, especially Johnny Lawrence, and they're very fleshed out in a human way. And then the new characters, I could already see that Miguel, he's going to become the new Johnny Lawrence for sure. And then Robbie, he's going to become the Daniel Russo, but with the Johnny Lawrence edge because he is Johnny Lawrence's son. And then Sam, Daniel Russo's daughter, she is going to become the Ally, okay, of the show. And at the same time, she's also a fighter. And so you remember at the end of the show where Daniel Russo is taking Robbie to Mr. Miyagi's old place, and that's going to be the new Miyagi studio. And so there's going to be, my guess is this very next season, competing dojos, right? One with Cobra Kai and the other one with Miyagi Studios. So this is going to be pretty interesting, or Miyagi Dojo. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And so you could already see that dynamic forming. And then one really interesting character that returned is John Kreese. And so I think he'll play a big part in this, because if you saw at the end of the show, it looks like Hawk and more than likely Miguel is going to go over to the dark side, okay? And I have good reasons why Miguel is going to do that, because I think what had happened is, as Johnny is redeveloping a relationship with his actual son, Robbie, and then now there's this conflict that Daniel Larusso is Robbie's teacher and sensei, then Miguel might feel like he's been left behind. And so John Kreese will be the one to fill that void, very much like Johnny Lawrence when he was a kid, and his stepdad, who wasn't really a dad, he was a jerk. And so John Kreese filled that void for him. So that's what I think is going to happen. And then with Robbie, he feels like he's been left behind by Johnny Lawrence. And at the same time, he's attracted to this girl, Sam, who is Miguel's girlfriend. Very similar to the very first Karate Kid, where Ali was originally Johnny Lawrence's girlfriend, and then Daniel Russo steps into the picture. Whereas Johnny saw that, Daniel Russo took his girlfriend. So that's a huge dynamic, and that's the one that I enjoy the most, where the characters, you really do care about them, and you want to learn more about them. And then other moments that I enjoyed was the actual training itself. It's so funny, those moments where they're in the dojo. I like how they spent a lot of time there, whereas in the whole Karate Kid series, it is one long training movie, whether it's Miyagi or those brief moments with Cobra Kai, or even if you look at Karate Kid 2, there's moments there where you see them training bits and pieces. But here, the training is really funny, especially with the kids in the dojo, and then also in the junkyard, that scene where they're getting ready for the tournament. That was hilarious. I enjoyed those moments, and there's throwbacks to the original. In that junkyard scene, Johnny Lawrence, I think, had his old jacket from the original movie. And also, whenever Daniel Russo is in his home studio where he's practicing by himself, and then later on you see flashbacks of him practicing with his daughter, and then thinking about Pat Morita. And that reminds me so much of mostly elements of Karate Kid 2. It's funny enough, okay? And then also the final homage that they paid to Pat Morita. Now, Pat Morita shows up throughout pretty much the whole season. But what I enjoyed the most was that really sweet moment where Daniel Russo went to go visit Mr. Miyagi at his grave, where it's so poignant, because Pat Morita or Mr. Miyagi had such a huge impact on him. And the creators wisely never forgot about Mr. Miyagi. They showed how important he was throughout the entire season. And then whenever you get to that moment, it gets really emotional, because Daniel Larusso is thinking about those times when he met Pat Morita, when he was looking at those classic cars that Mr. Miyagi had, and how he feels like there's a void missing because Mr. Miyagi's not there. And as you remember, Daniel Larusso, his father passed away in the Karate Kid, so Mr. Miyagi was his father figure. In the same way here, that his father is gone. Okay, so he doesn't have anybody to go to when he has questions, But that was a very sweet moment. And also another character that wasn't there, that they also made it very known that she's a very important character, is Ali herself. She's throughout this whole series without being there. Elizabeth Shue, the actress who played her. And so she is the main reason why these guys are conflicted against each other. I think she's a big reason for that, besides the actual bullying itself. And then when you look at it from Johnny Lawrence's point of view, it was like Daniel Russo was stealing his girlfriend. And so there are so many moments there, and it's so funny how all those moments, they're driven by the characters, by these people. And I think that's the best way to tell the story. And then even when, we get to the final battle with the sequence at All Valley, it was very similar, and I thought that even though that was rehashed in some cases, I do like how they actually pointed back towards previous moments in Karate Kid, such as Miguel doing the crane kick, or whenever Hawk, hurt Robbie from the back, and now Robbie's hurt while fighting Johnny Lawrence. Those were great throwbacks. But then you could also get throwbacks of, here's Mr. Miyagi coming in, Daniel Russo, and here's moments of John Kreese with Johnny Lawrence, but Johnny Lawrence never really went over the edge in that way, but he's conflicted, because that's his son over there. And then his student, he just really he's angry, and even Hawk, to a lesser extent, is angry as well. And so all those moments, they make me want to watch more of it. I'm not sure where they're going to go on the second season, because if I had to guess, obviously they're going to focus a lot more on the younger kids and develop them as characters, so then they could become the central characters of any future Karate Kid series going forward. And then in terms of the original characters, I think that there will be some type of romantic relationship that's going to develop between Johnny Lawrence and Miguel's mother. It looks like that's going to happen, and it would also cause some more conflict. And then maybe they will definitely focus more on the relationship between Johnny Lawrence and Robbie, and maybe even, Robbie's mother or Johnny Lawrence's previous relationship. So that is a whole nother area that they can explore as well. And then when it comes to Daniel Larusso, I think in this second season, now they're going to focus on him building up Miyagi Dojo. And so that is going to be interesting. And so whereas this first one is mainly all about Johnny Lawrence and building up Cobra Kai in a new way, the second season is going to be Daniel LaRusso building up Miyagi Dojo, and then the actual characters that surround that. So I'm pretty sure Sam is going to be a main central character in there for that new dojo. And then once again, it'll cause conflict, because now I'm pretty sure there's going to be relationship building up between Sam and Robbie. Okay. And then with John Kreese, this is going to be extremely interesting, because now he's back in the picture. So what happens to Cobra Kai? What happens with Johnny Lawrence? Because even though John Kreese beat Johnny Lawrence up in part 2, and he was just not a good person, it's really the only father that Johnny Lawrence had. It's who introduced him to Cobra Kai, to martial arts. And so there's going to be a power struggle there. And I think that's going to add a whole nother element there that we have not seen before. And so overall, those are the main spoilers. And they're mainly not too many spoilers, because honestly, there's really not much to spoil at a certain point, because you kind of see remnants of the Karate Kid, but they still do things differently. And there's moments where I think, like, man, even though they are reminiscent of the previous Karate Kid series, they never did it in a way that felt really cheap, okay? Or did it in a way that felt nostalgic for just nostalgic's sake, right? And so they had a purpose to it, especially for people who remember those series. And so that's overall my thoughts on it. There's probably many other things that I might have left out, but overall, those are my feelings, okay? So those are the things that I thought really made the series that much better, okay? So if you had any thoughts on this, or any of your own moments that you feel that I didn't cover here, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these videos, be sure to subscribe. And if you wanted to support my channel further, you could do that at patreon.com/Geek Outdoors. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.